Joseph's 15-year-old son hit Carrie's vehicle.
Court come to order. All rise.
Judge Judy enters.
Have a seat, please.
Kevin approaches.
Hello, Judge.
Good morning.
Case 2138, Cargill versus Simonet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Judy turns to Carrie.
Ms. Cargill, you and the defendant's son had an accident while you were driving your car, and Mr. Simonet's son was driving his electric scooter.
It was like a skateboard, a one-wheel skateboard.
Judy gestures at a young man who rises.
Tell me your name.
Jacob Simonet.
Describe this vehicle that you were riding on.
It's got 2 spaces for your feet. Has one on the back, one on the front.
Now try to look at me. I'm trying to see you.
Oh.
Trying
There's
to
one in the
go
back,
like this.
one in the front, and then there's a big wheel in the center. And you put your feet on either side, and then it balances, and you ride it kind of like a skateboard.
Oh, I actually
had a
have
feeling you
picture
might
of
need it.
myself riding on one of those for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
We bought it for one of my grandchildren years ago, but it's motorized.
Yes,
It has a motor.
it's electric.
And how fast does it go?
Tops out at about 17 miles an hour.
17.
Yes.
That's pretty fast. Are you required to drive that on the street where pedestrians walk or where cars ride?
On the sidewalk with the pedestrians.
Sidewalk.
Yes.
Do you drive it on the sidewalk?
Yes, I do.
Do you ever drive it in the street?
I do not.
Now you're going to tell me what happened on the date of this incident, which was August 17th.
This year, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was going south after work, and I was going to, crossing through the intersection. I had the green light.
Is there a chart?
Yes. Yes.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I was crossing the intersection.
You're the blue car.
I'm the blue car. And I had the green, it was going, and Jacob had cut through on the red into the green and slammed into the side of my car. He had cut through the intersection.
So he was in the street where the cars travel,
Yes,
not on the sidewalk.
right. He was not in the walkway.
Okay, Jacob, I want you to walk up to that sign and show me where you were when you and the plaintiff collided.
I was about right here.
You were in a crosswalk.
Yeah, I was in the crosswalk coming through about
Okay,
right.
is that what, Jacob, is that what the police report is going to indicate? That you were in the crosswalk?
I don't know.
Well, I assume that there is a police report. Is that correct? Police report's going to tell me where the debris was, I assume. The debris is either going to be in a crosswalk or it's going to be in the street. Where do you think it's going to be?
Some of it was in the street.
Show me the street that you're talking about.
About like right
No,
here.
put your finger on it. Don't go around where it's
About right here.
right there. That would be in the middle, right? That would be in the middle of the street where the cars travel, not in the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Yes,
Judy turns to Joseph.
it's easy.
Sure.
How old is he?
15.
15. I've had a whole bunch of those who are 15. You know when they're telling a fib?
How?
When their mouths are moving.
He's a pretty good kid.
All of my kids are pretty good kids. But you can always
Figure
tell.
it out, huh?
Yeah, you can usually tell. Is this your first, only?
Both, first and only.
First and only. Oh, well, she probably had some experience with that anyway.
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay, and this happened at what time during the day?
I believe it was about 4, a little after 4:30.
So it was light out.
Yes.
You collided with her car on the driver's side.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, on the door of the driver's side.
The fender.
Fender,
Yes.
side fender?
Yes, side fender.
Okay, not the front of the car.
The front fender of the car.
Front fender of the car on the side. I'm talking about it was the side or the front?
The side.
Side. So you collided with her.
Yeah.
Because cars don't move sideways.
Yes.
He could have been quite seriously injured.
Yes, he could. He hit the side of the car and he flew up onto the hood and then kind of rolled across the hood, hit my windshield, and then fell onto the ground. And when I stopped, he jumped up, appeared at my window, and apologized, and then asked me if I was okay.
What did he say?
Just said he was sorry. And then he asked me if I was okay. And then I asked him if he was okay. And then he asked me if I was okay. And it went back
So
and
far,
forth
is that
a little
right?
bit.
Yes.
Okay.
And which I was very impressed by, that he was more worried about me than anything else. I moved my car out of the road, onto the side of the road. There was an EMT that was across the street from us, and he came over and assessed him if there was any more damage. He got some road rash and things like that, but he was not seriously hurt, at least that we noticed at the time.
Do you have the police report?
I do.
I'd like to see it, please, Kevin.
Carrie hands a document to Kevin, who brings it to Judy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
She reviews it.
One witness said that he was right next to you and that you went past him and that the light was red. His light was red, which is why he was stopped. That's what I'm reading. He did say that his light was red when the kid initially passed in front of him. Did you get a copy of this police report?
I've seen it, yes.
Explain to me, would you put on this again and leave that one on because that's the version that I believe. Would you walk over there and explain to me what cut the corner was, what you were doing? It talks about cutting the corners. So I want you to understand, I believe that, based upon what I'm reading here, I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want you to show me how you cut the corner.
So I was coming to this one, and I went through, and instead of going here and just going through the sidewalk, I just went like around here and through this crosswalk.
What's cut the corner?
Cut the corner here, right there.
You mean just that little space is what you're talking about? You cut the corner?
Yeah, I went from about.
I want you to understand, I believe that you were in the street. I believe you were in the street, not in a crosswalk. So let's run through that again. Would you please show me what cut the corner was?
Went through here, and I came here, and I cut here. So right there, I
Okay.
cut the corner.
Judy gestures for Jacob to return to his table.
He is a nice boy, Mr. Simonet.
Thank you.
Caption, coming up.
You know what my father told me when he gave me my first car? I think I was 17, but it was like a tank. He said, because if you get in an accident, I want you to be surrounded by 4,000 pounds of steel.
And later today,
Your claim is that you won a whole bunch of money in some gambling thing. I just want you to tell me how much you won.
Before taxes or after?
Both.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Carrie, Joseph, and Jacob.
Carrie Cargill claims Joseph Simonet owes for damage after his 15-year-old son hit Carrie's car while riding an electric skateboard.
Okay. The police determined that based upon the eyewitness testimony that the pedestrian, Jacob, is at fault and believed to have crossed the intersection before having the right-of-way. The vehicle had the green light. In any event, do you have photographs of your car?
Carrie with a photo.
This happened in August, and you were called to the scene by your son, is that right?
Correct.
And you got there, you know that he was a little banged up, but thankfully.
He was in
okay.
an ambulance when I arrived, but shortly after, yes, he did walk out of the ambulance and suffered some injuries, which I have pictures of if you'd like to see them,
I'm sure he was banged up. He had bruises from falling off the.
from being launched from the vehicle after the collision. Correct.
Okay. You know, he was really lucky that she wasn't going faster.
Correct. Could have been much worse. We were
Could have been much
thankful
worse.
for his health on the outcome of the incident.
You're right. Okay, can I see an estimate to fix your car, please?
A document.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Judy reviews it.
What kind of a car do you have?
A 2015 Equinox Chevy?
You had full coverage on the car, is that right?
Yes.
But with a $1,000 deductible.
Yes.
So if you put this through to your insurance, you have a $1,000 deductible,
Yes.
right? Anything else you want to tell me, Jacob?
Nope.
Do you still ride one of those things?
It's broken. I didn't get a new one, no.
It was destroyed in the accident.
You know what my father told me when he gave me my first car? I think I was 17. He bought me the oldest, ugliest car, but it was like a tank. All my other friends were getting these nice, cute little cars, and this one was like an old person's tank Cadillac or something. You know, we're talking 50 years ago. And I said, why do I have to have this car? Everybody else has cute cars. He said, because if you get in an accident, I want you to be surrounded by 4,000 pounds of steel. That's pretty much the lesson that I've sent out there. 4,000 pounds of steel. One and only, surrounded by lots of steel. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,000. Thank you, we're finished.
This court is adjourned.
Carrie, then Joseph.
Overall, I'm happy.
She had some fault due to hitting a pedestrian in a crosswalk.
It was surreal, like out of the movies.
Your heart stops, and all you can do is look for the car keys and panic and get there as fast as you can.
I am so glad that he was okay.
I remember just flying through the air, and then I was on the ground, and I got right up.
Be very careful.
Count your blessings and enjoy every moment that you have, because things could change in an instant.
Sarah and Judy.
I know these electric scooters and skateboards are very popular, but even before this case, I tried to look up any rules, laws, regulations. There are a few for electric motorbikes and things like that, but far fewer than I would expect for a machine that can go up to 17 miles an hour when you're 15.
I think that you're right. I think that since those things have become so popular, they really have to be enforced rules. And parents, and this is a very nice father and son, but I've seen kids weave in and out of cars. It always looked like an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah. And this one could have ended in a real tragedy.
He was lucky, and his father knew he was lucky.
Yeah.
Case 21-24, McPherson versus Hall. All parties, please step forward.
Gerald McPherson is suing his ex-girlfriend, Natasha Hall, for money she received during their relationship.
Mr. McPherson,
Yes.
how old are you, sir?
40.
What kind of work do you do?
Home care aid?
Independent, or do you work for a company?
Home care aid agency.
For an agency?
Yes.
How long have you been working for them?
About a year now, but I've been doing home care for about 3 years.
Prior to working for them the past year, and you're still working for them, is that right? Was there a period of time when you were unemployed?
Not more than maybe 3 weeks, but since I know Ms. Hall,
No, I don't want to know about Ms. Hall.
no, I'm telling you my employments that since I've lived in her residence, I've always worked. I worked at the zoo,
No.
Census Bureau.
Don't try to think ahead of me.
Okay.
There was a period of time in 2020, according to you, that you became homeless and were living in a shelter.
Yeah, that
And that was in what month in 2020?
in June. So if I can explain the situation. I was living in a house that a slumlord wasn't doing the repairs. So I ended up forcing his hand, him selling the property, and the new landlord and my...
Could you look at me when you're talking?
I'm sorry. The new landlord and my other ex, they kept the property. I moved out. I went to a shelter because I didn't want nothing to do with her or the...
You're talking about her?
No, ma'am.
Well, then don't keep pointing to her. I'm asking you...
I'm just pointing in general. I'm not pointing at her.
You actually pointed
I'm sorry.
to her. When you were in the shelter, were you employed?
Yes, for the Census Bureau,
Okay.
doing the census. I was actually out in the field knocking on doors. I was an enumerator.
So you were not working in home health care, you were a census taker.
At that time, yes.
And did you have a child living with you?
Yes, well, not in the shelter, no. I could not have my daughter in the shelter.
How old is your daughter?
10.
And where is her mother?
She's deceased.
Where was your daughter living when you were in the shelter?
With my mother.
Is she living with you now?
She's been with me since June.
In a new apartment?
Yes, I moved in August 1st.
She goes to school from your apartment?
Yes.
Okay. In 2020, you became acquainted with Miss Hall, and there came a time shortly thereafter, uncross your arms, and there came a point shortly thereafter when you moved into her home.
In August, yes.
Of 2020. And you remained in her home until what month and year?
August of 2022.
And in what month and year did you regain custody of your daughter?
June of 2022.
So there was a period of 2 months when you and your daughter lived in Miss Hall's home.
You could say that, but...
Well, I'm saying that because I just asked you a question about timeline.
No, because me and Miss Hall was going through our dispute about this money, my daughter was staying with my grandma. I only brought my daughter there on certain occasions.
When I say you regained custody of your daughter, was that a court order?
Yes, I have it right here.
Just a second. Was the child removed by court order from your custody?
It was removed because the house...
Don't tell me because.
Yes,
it was yes.
Yes.
I have lots of things to do today.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Child was removed from your custody.
Because I didn't have nowhere to live at the time.
Was the child removed from your custody before you moved into the shelter?
She was removed because I was in the shelter.
Did you take her to the shelter?
No, I was not allowed to because there's no men.
So at that time,
female
did she go and live with your mother?
Of course.
Was that by court order?
No, it was
brought her to your mother?
Yes.
May I see the court order that involves custody, please?
Here you go.
I'm not getting an answer.
This is the court order, and this is these two forms.
Gerald hands a document to Kevin, who brings it to Judy. She reviews it.
Now, that court order is the current.
Shh. Okay, so the child was placed with the Commissioner of Social Services in Pennsylvania. And the child was placed in kinship foster care, which is a program that I am very familiar with the child's paternal grandmothers. So in June of this year, the child was returned to your custody. At some point in August of this year is when you and the defendants separated and you left the house. This is your claim. Your claim is that you won a whole bunch of money in some gambling thing. What kind of gambling thing?
Caption, coming up.
I don't want to go back to the year, Gimel, sir. All I want you to do is tell me how much rent you were paying her.
To be honest, I had to...
I don't know. I want you to be dishonest with me.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Gerald and Natasha.
Gerald McPherson claims his ex-girlfriend, Natasha Hall, wrongfully spent the money he gave her for rent.
Your claim is that you won a whole bunch of money in some gambling thing. What kind of gambling thing? I want you to look at me when you talk, not at the papers.
I was going to...
In what kind of gambling thing did you win money?
I betted on 25 games.
What 25 games?
NBA, college, hockey.
Okay, and you bet where?
On FanDuel. It's an app called FanDuel.
Okay, and you won?
Yes.
I don't understand the whole thing. I don't want to learn the whole thing. I don't care about the whole thing. I just want you to tell me how much you won.
Before taxes or after?
Both.
Okay, $36,742, and after taxes, $26,889.
On what date?
So I won the bet on the 28th. It came into my account.
28th of what?
January.
Of what year?
This year.
And you had been living with Miss Hall for 2 years?
Prior, yes.
Okay, and you were working according to you all of that time?
Yes.
Okay, good. Were you paying any rent to Miss Hall?
I have receipts.
Yes, I want to see those. How much rent were you paying?
So when I met Miss Hall...
I don't want to go back to the year, Gimel, sir. All I want you to do is tell me how much rent you were paying her.
To be honest, I had to pay
I don't know. I want you to
rent.
be dishonest with me.
Half her rent is like $425, and she had me pay half the gas and half the electric and half the cable.
Her rent was $425?
No, it's $850. I had to split it. We're
$850.
paying half and half.
Miss Hall?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of work do you do?
I do customer service.
And who else lives in the apartment with you?
My children,
How old are they?
14 and 13.
How large is the apartment?
It's a 2-bedroom.
And the total rent is $850?
Yes, ma'am.
There's no subsidy involved?
No subsidy at all.
Okay. And you have a lease?
Yes, ma'am.
How much did you charge, if anything, Mr. McPherson as rent?
$425.
Well, that doesn't quite sound fair, does it? Did she make a figure with you of $425?
I paid more than that. I paid $425. That's half of the rent. I paid half of the electric and half of the internet bill.
There are 4 people in the house,
Yes.
right? Why is he
But
paying
we're
for?
only
Shh.
2 people.
Why was he paying for half the rent?
Oh, my children don't work, and his child didn't work either.
His child wasn't with you.
The child came with us in June, but she had visitations on weekends.
I don't care if she has visitations. Your children live with you.
Yes.
They don't have to work. They're your children. They're not his responsibility. Okay, I just want to know where everybody's head is at. There came a point, Miss Hall, when Mr. McPherson gave you $6,000 in cash.
No, not in cash.
Check.
No. Both of them was wired. One was directly wired into our Bank of America account.
When? Just a second. When?
The first transaction was on January 31st. The second transaction...
January 31st of?
This year. And the second transaction was the next day, February 1st. $12,000 total.
Do you acknowledge, Miss Hall, receiving $12,000 in your account from Mr. McPherson, or do I have to look at his records?
I do not acknowledge. He gave me $6,000 and $4,500.
$6,000 and $4,500, Mr. McPherson. Does that sound right?
No, it's not right, and I'm going to show you.
Let me see your bank record.
All right. Hey,
And
sir.
Let us assume that it's $6,000 and $4,500 that he gave you in this year, 2022.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. Let us assume for the moment that you're correct, because you're suing for $6,000.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, because the first initial $6,000 was 8 months' rent. That I'm not.
Let us
suing for.
assume that you are correct, that he gave you $6,000 and $4,500. I'm taking you at face value. In January and February of 2022.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the money for?
That he gave me?
Yes. The 2 different amounts of money.
Yes.
There's a $6,000 and a $4,500.
500 was for me to pay my car note off. And
Hey, just a second.
Go ahead.
Why would he pay your car note off?
He said he wanted to.
Oh, no. That's ridiculous. Ms. Hall, let me
So,
just check.
can I say something?
No.
He even wrote that on there for your car note.
No, you said in January he won a bet and cashed it out. A few days later, he gave me money via Cash App to catch up on his rent and as a thank you for helping him out. I don't see anything here about gift for a car note in your answer.
So he gave me the money for the car note, and as far as the Cash App money, he gave me money lots of times. So yes,
No,
he
I'm
did.
talking about the $6,000, madam.
Yes.
Let us assume he gave you $4,500 to pay off your car note. That's what you said.
Correct.
What's the $6,000 for?
The $6,000 was for us to move,
For who to move?
me and him.
Show me.
The $6,000?
Yeah, show me that there's proof. He says he gave you the money according to his complaint to hold for him.
Yes. We
Just a second.
A document.
Yeah, February 3rd, he gave you $6,000. This just says he gave it to you.
Yes.
And?
And he told me to hold it so we can move.
Well, you didn't move.
No,
You
she
didn't.
moved.
Shh. He told you to hold it for him so that you could all move.
No.
So
He
who
told
could
me-
move?
So me and him and our children could move.
Well, that's what I just said.
I apologize.
So that we can move.
Correct.
But you didn't move together.
Correct.
So you have to give him his money back. That's simple.
thank you.
Just a second. That's simple. If you say he gave you the money so that the two of you could move and that event never took place, but he in fact moved out, you owe him $6,000.
But then he agreed.
That's just a second. That's an easy. Okay. Do I have to deal with anything else? Money for lost wages, rent, utilities? Forget it. He paid all of that with the $4,500 when he paid off your car note. Come on, let's get it together. Lost wages. What are the lost wages for?
But then I had to take off from work because of the PFA, and I had to take off from work to go file out the court and things like that. But in the midst of him saying the $6,000, he didn't pay rent. He didn't pay all of his rent.
He paid off your car note. You owe him $6,000. Your counterclaim's dismissed. We're finished. Thank you very much.
Okay.
This court is adjourned.
Natasha.
Well, I don't agree with the judge's decision. I don't think I owe him the money
That's what women do.
because he gave me a gift and he didn't pay rent.
I also spent $2,000 on her in gifts.
What's done is done.
I'm taking a break from women for quite some time now.
Sarah and Judy.
So I'm glad that the plaintiff's daughter didn't have to go into the larger foster care system and was able to stay with plaintiff's mother. But I was curious that if this was a temporary slip up and he wasn't going to be permanently without housing, why wouldn't he go with his daughter to his mother's house? I was surprised you didn't ask him that question.
You're right.
Fees.
Court come to order. All rise.
Judge Judy enters.
Have a seat, please.
Kevin approaches the bench.
Case 2128, Hall versus Benedum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hall, you and the defendant are neighbors,
Yes, ma'am.
and your houses are right next to each other.
Hers is on the corner, mine is
Right next to her.
Yes.
Got it. What your complaint is that I see where those two, the truck and the vehicle behind it,
The trailer, yes, ma'am.
the trailer. The property to the left of that is your house,
Yes, ma'am.
and the property to the right of that is the defendant's house.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is your claim that the defendant, in writing, agreed to sell you that little piece of property that looks like it's been carved out of her property.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you had a narrow driveway, you wanted to park these two vehicles.
Yes, ma'am.
Based upon that agreement, you went ahead and did some work on that piece of property.
Yes, ma'am.
You put down gravel, you planted flowers, all to make it look as if that piece of property was part of your house.
Not so much to make it look like it's part of my house so I can get in it, because the agreement was that there was 3 pine trees there prior to her telling that I can buy the property.
No. The 3 trees that are there had nothing to do with this except that they were taken down. And were they taken down and the removal of the trees was paid for by you or by her?
By both of us.
By both. Okay. So you asked to have the trees removed, and you both paid to have the trees removed.
Okay.
Not only did you cut the trees down, but you took that property and made it look like yours. You say that there was an agreement in writing for her to sell you that piece of property. So I'd like
Yes,
to
ma'am.
see that agreement.
Yes, ma'am.
There's no agreement in writing.
Don't say anything.
The very top line.
Just a second.
Kevin hands a document to Judy, who reviews it. This
is not a contract, sir, to sell land.
I have a lot more.
Shh. not a contract to sell land. I see what she says to you. I am agreeing to sell you the property you are currently parked on for $1,000 plus costs. Let's get this in motion ASAP. And then she doesn't hear from you, and that's the 18th of May. And then she writes you again a little bit later, and she says her offer will expire at the end of today's business day, 5/19. And on 5/19, at 10 o'clock at night, you write to her, "Hey, Stacy, I've started working on things this morning. I have already been to the city of Akron, and once they are done and I get a surveyor and so on, I will keep you updated if that's okay. Last, everything is time sensitive, and I'm working as fast as I can to get the approvals. Just now seeing your texts."
Right.
Okay,
The
so
next
that's
day.
what you're relying on as a contract to purchase property.
Well, the fact that she said that she would sell it to me, and I started all the motion like she said to do. I started all the motions, got the surveyor done, got the deeds done, I got everything done.
All right, that was 5/19/2021. So show me what you did based on this and what you spent based on your belief that she had agreed to sell you the property and you had an agreement for sale, which is like a contract to sale of property. Most people know that when you sell a piece of property, you get a survey, you put it in the contract, you have a contract when the property is going to be transferred. That property would have to be surveyed because clearly you're carving a piece of property out of her property. I want to see what you did and what you spent, because if you spent money based on this, I may consider that as part of your lawsuit, because then it turned out she didn't want to sell you the property. By the way, I wouldn't sell them the property either. It makes your property look ridiculous.
It does. We never agreed to sell the property. Okay.
Did you write, "I am agreeing to sell you the property you are currently parked on for $1,000 plus costs"?
Yes, I never agreed to sell the property until I told him he was no longer allowed to park there. It was never discussed.
What is this?
Depending on the stipulation that my mortgage company requires, which is an appraisal, they had to approve the selling of the property.
All I'm interested in is this one line. The other ifs fall after that. It says, "I'm agreeing to sell you the property you are currently parked on for $1,000 plus costs."
Yes.
Okay, so you did that.
Yes.
I want to see the things that you started to do right after May 19th. You said, "I've already started working on things this morning." This is May 19th. "I've already been to the city of Akron."
Yes. This is a receipt showing the $800 from the surveyor.
Okay, may I see that, please?
There's that one. This is a receipt from the attorney where I had the deed paperwork done.
I'm looking for a date on this, sir. I'm looking for dates
Here's
on
another-
these
you can
things.
look at this one too.
Okay, June 15th. What is this?
That's actually when I paid to have the 3 deeds made up. That's the $450 that I had to pay to the attorney for him to make the 3 deeds up. And everything Stacey had to do was sign them.
And that was June 15th. That was not quite a month later.
Right. I started the next day.
Okay. And this is so far what you spent in reliance on her statement that I'll sell you the property for $1,000.
This is a breakdown that I have, that I wrote down, that you can show her that, of everything, the timeline and...
Now, I don't need a breakdown of the timeline, sir. I need the bills for this, not what you wrote.
Okay.
I need the bills for 6 tons of gravel. That was in July.
Here's one receipt right here. There you go.
Julian produces documents.
Did he ever give you $1,000?
He never paid me.
Caption coming up.
I'm a common sense person and a property owner. It was overreaching to think that you could buy a piece of that land for $1,000. Overreaching.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Julian and Stacy.
Julian Hall claims his neighbor, Stacy Benedum, owes for building costs and attorney fees. Stacy is countersuing, claiming Julian was illegally parking on her property.
Okay, so far all I have that you paid was $450 for the deeds, $800 for the survey, and gravel to be delivered.
I got the gravel in there. I also have the concrete that I had laid, flowers and stuff that I put in.
Did he pay part of having the tree stumps removed?
We split the cost and the labor of removing the debris of the trees.
No, ma'am,
What?
that's not true.
Who wanted the trees removed?
I never had a problem with the trees. I
not
like the
true.
trees.
Don't speak.
He wanted the trees cut down so he could have more space. He was already parking underneath the trees with a smaller trailer. just not his truck. He wanted more space, so he came to me and said, hey, what if I split the cost of the cutting of the trees? I said, that's fine, I'll split the cost, that's fine with me. And then I agreed to let him continue to park there as long as there was no tire marks. That's what it was. And then he built this thing.
Well, he formalized parking there. Okay. At what point did Miss Benedum tell you that she was not going to sell you the property?
This actually started on 4/3 of 18.
I'm not interested. I'm interested in the beginning of these texts, where you clearly had discussions, trees were removed. I don't quite understand why she allowed you to remove the trees, and I don't understand the whole transaction.
Because it wasn't my choice.
Just a second, it was your choice. You wanted to park there. That's what you wanted.
But the trees was dying.
I don't care if they were dying. I don't care if they were shriveled up. I don't care. You carved out a piece of property. Now, if you carved out a piece of property that belongs to her and you didn't have an appropriate agreement in writing, which it has to be, then I believe, based upon her statement that you acted on, you're entitled to whatever you spent to renovate that property. Do you understand? You're not entitled to the property.
No, I understand.
You're not entitled to the property. You're entitled to what you spent to renovate the property. So now I want you to tell me, on what date did she tell you that she was not going to sell you the property?
That was 7/20 of 21. After I'd got everything done and called her, and asked her, could she meet me at the bank? She said, no, I'm not selling to you for $1,000. But it goes deeper than that. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. It goes deeper than that, because when it came to the trees, I didn't approach her with the trees. She came to me and said, since the tree was dying, I said, well, I'll go in half with you. At that point, I said, when can I use the property? She said, you can use it as long as you need it. So that's when I started investing all this money into the property.
So what? I don't care. She said to you, you can use it as long as you want.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I said nothing permanent.
She said, as long as I need it. That's why I invested the gravel.
Okay. What I'm telling you, sir, is the purchase and sale of property has to be with a certain formality. If you dealt with an attorney, the attorney would tell you that it had to be in a formality, signed by her, signed by you, a contract that provided for sale, when it took place, what the survey was, whether her bank would agree to let her sell off a piece of the property because you have a mortgage, all of those things. That's why agreements to sell real property, which is land, have to be in accordance with a certain set of rules. This doesn't make it. However, if you relied on her statement in order to improve the property, to make it comfortable for you based upon her text message, I believe that you are entitled, based upon the text message, to what you spent to improve it. But you have to understand, she's not going to let you park there anymore.
And I'm okay with that.
Just a second. Are you still parking there?
No, ma'am.
Since when?
I would say September of 2022.
So you were parked there in July of 21, August of 21, September of 21, October of 21, November of 21, December of 21, January of 22, all the way up to September. You were parking there.
This is because we had...
Don't give me a because.
No,
that's either a yes or a no.
I was parked there, but we also had a civil case, too.
Which he dismissed 2 days before.
We had a civil case. She called the police.
He called the police on me twice.
The question was, when did she tell you she wasn't going to sell you the property?
September, when she agreed not to meet me at the bank. That's when she told me she wasn't going to sell.
September of 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
I never knew we were meeting at a bank.
Just a second. So
I can do better
in
than that.
September of 2022, she advised you.
No, I'm sorry, it was August of 2021.
Well, show me in August of 2021 that you told him you weren't selling him the property.
Here's.
Okay, I'll take both, Kevin.
Julian and Stacy hand documents to Kevin.
Thank you.
He brings them to Judy, who reviews them.
And this was after she agreed.
Shh. Okay. I'm just looking for the date on this.
Yeah, there's not a date on there, I'm sorry, but that was after May 18th of 2021. That was maybe July or August of 2021 when I told him, since he didn't meet all the requirements, that I no longer want to sell
What
it.
requirements?
He never met the requirements of paying me the money or getting the land appraised. The only thing he didn't do that my mortgage required is the appraisal.
Ma'am, that wasn't true, because I did everything that the city of Akron told me to do, who deal with this on a regular.
Did you get an appraisal?
I got the land surveyed. She didn't tell me about nothing about appraisal until after I got everything done.
That's why you have a contract in writing for the sale of property, sir. I don't think you did anything intentionally wrong, but there was an appraisal that was necessary. Clearly, if she has a mortgage and a bank is giving her a certain amount of money on a parcel of property, and she wants to sell off a piece of that property, the bank is going to want to know how much the value of the property has diminished by her selling it to you. So you have to have an appraisal. Do you understand?
I understand that.
Okay, and you didn't have an appraisal. I'm not going to tell it to you again. And all I want to know is when she first told you that you didn't have a deal. So once she told you that you didn't have a deal, whatever else you invested in this property was on you.
No, and I didn't invest anything else other than getting an attorney and paying everything I needed to pay him.
Once she told you that she wasn't selling the property to you, what'd you need an attorney for?
Caption coming up.
You're not the aggrieved party here. You got to park for free because she was a good soul. I would have had your trailer and your truck towed to an impound on day 2.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Julian and Stacy.
Julian Hall has accused his neighbor, Stacy Benedum, of breaking their agreement. Stacy claims there was never an agreement and is countersuing for parking fees.
Once she told you that she wasn't selling the property to you, what'd you need an attorney for?
Because I had already had an investment after she said she was going to sell it to me. Once the attorney got involved, he told me to dismiss the case. Then after that, like 3 days later, I moved off the property.
Just a minute. So who brought a civil case?
I did.
When?
Last year of 21.
And what happened with that case?
It was dismissed.
What did you bring a case against her for?
For breach of contract.
It was dismissed because there was no contract.
Your Honor, can I say something?
What?
He made all these improvements in 2018 before we ever discussed selling the property.
You mean he put the gravel in?
Yeah.
Well, how could he put the gravel in over trees?
The trees were cut down in 2018.
Is that right, sir? Hey,
That's correct.
the trees
yes,
that were cut down in 2018, well before this.
Yes.
So you did use it. You used it for how many years? You used it 18, 19, 20, and 21. You used it. You used it. You had value from it. You had value from somebody else's property. You used her property for you to park on. You can't.
I wouldn't have done none of this if she would have told me no. Every move that I made, I asked her first. I got it in text message. I asked her, can I do this? Can I do this? She said, yeah, go ahead and do it. If she would have said no, I wouldn't have done none of it. I wouldn't have put a dime into the property.
I'm not going back to 2018, sir. If you made these improvements in the property in 2018 or 2019, before there was any hint of a writing that she was going to sell you property.
She had a verbal that I can park there as long as I wanted to.
Okay, your case is dismissed, Mr. Hall. You don't have a case. You did park there until she told you not to park there anymore. And you had the benefit of parking there for at least 3 years.
I got money invested that she told me
you
that
had
I
the
can do
benefit
it.
of parking your things there for at least 3 years. Are they gone now?
His truck and trailer are, but the gravel's still there, and we have to clean up, get rid of that stuff.
It was a huge mistake, so you're going to have to take care of that yourself.
Okay.
And I would take care of that because that looks ridiculous.
I will.
That looks ridiculous. You have a counterclaim.
Yes.
For parking. Forget it.
But listen, I told him he couldn't park there back in May of 2021. He continued to park there till...
So you should have been more vigilant.
My attorney didn't notify him till May of this year of 2022 that if he continues to park there, we'll charge him $75 a day. And he continued to park there until the case was dismissed in August of 2022. So I'm only suing him for May of 2022 to August of 22.
And did he move it?
He did.
Okay. You still living there?
Yes.
Do you talk to him?
No.
Had you talked to him previously?
Yeah.
We had a good relationship.
I'm a common sense person and a property owner. It was overreaching to think that you could buy a piece of that land for $1,000. Overreaching. And if she had it appraised, and if it's something that you want, and she had, I guarantee you that that little piece of property would be appraised at a far higher cost than $1,000. Guaranteed. And I guarantee you that her bank would say, you can't let him buy that piece of property for $1,000. How much of a mortgage are you carrying?
$76,000.
Not going to let her sell off that piece of property. You had the benefit of that piece of property for several years. I have to tell you that I really think that it's much nicer to look at plain grass than it is to look at a trailer and a truck. from her backyard.
Your Honor, I wouldn't have done none of it.
I don't.
You would have said do it.
Do you know what your attorney said to you? I can't help you. You don't have a contract. And Mr. Hall, that's what I'm telling you. I can't help you. You don't have a contract. And from what I know now, this all started in 2018 before there was any discussion of buying the property that you can prove to me. Because the thing that you gave me was in 2021. I have to tell you, you never had a problem because she was a good neighbor. If she let you park on her property, so if you think you're the one who's been aggrieved here, the truth of the matter is I don't think that you're the one who was aggrieved here. She let you park on her property. I have to tell you, I wouldn't have let that happen. I had a neighbor who had an easement. And I said, all I want from you when I bought the house was I want you to say that you will never try to claim this property by adverse possession and that you understand that it's my property. And then you can use it because it was a place that looked like it was part of his driveway. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm not signing that. I said, if you don't sign it, I'm going to put a fence right in the middle of your front lawn, which is where my property line is. I don't hear from him. I said, you have 24 hours to sign the paper or I'm putting a fence right in the middle of your front lawn because that's my property and you have an easement. And he didn't sign it. He would have lived with the fence until today because it's still there. Now his children are living with the fence because he's gone. You're not the aggrieved party here. You got to park for free for 4 years. For free. Because she was a good soul. She's not a bad guy. She was a good soul. I would have had your trailer and your truck towed to an impound on day 2. She let you park there for 4 years.
I wouldn't have been there.
Goodbye, we're done. Thank you.
This court is adjourned.
Outside the courtroom, Julie and then Stacy.
She knew what type of work I did, so she said as long as I needed it.
It was just a tough lesson of being nice to the wrong person.
It did look like it was part of my yard, so I get that part.
I hope we can be cordial and just move on with our life.
It is what it is.
Sarah and Judy.
This is a great example of the statute of frauds and why it exists. So all writings for the sale of land, real estate, have to be in writing and signed by both parties. I'm sure it was created for situations just like these. There's a lot of moving parts. There's mortgages, there's banks involved a lot of the times.
There are easements, there are water rights,
Exactly.
there are all kinds of things.
Legally, they're some of the most complex documents that get drawn up. So it can't be a text message for
for false allegations, debit card charges, and personal belongings.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Kevin.
Case 2131, Gutierrez versus George.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss Gutierrez, this is your mother.
Yes, ma'am.
And who is this?
My grandmother.
And that's your daughter?
Yes.
I'm reading the complaint and the answer, and this is what your complaint is about. You claim that your mother had you falsely arrested, as a result of which you spent 4 months in jail. While you were in jail, it is your claim that your mother used a debit card of yours, I think $3,000 worth, and you had some belongings at her house that you want. I gather that you've had some problems in your own life. You have at least 3 children.
Yes.
Was the state ever involved in placing the children in foster care?
No.
And what about your daughter?
My daughter, yes.
And how old is your daughter?
She's 19 months.
At what point did the state become involved with your daughter?
In May of this year, May 18th of this year, when there was false allegations made against, when my mom refused to give me my daughter back.
In May, when you brought your daughter to your mother's house, when?
I called my brother on May 17th of 2022, and I asked him to babysit my daughter.
Your brother. And does your brother live with your mother?
Yes, he was staying with her at that time.
So on the 17th, you asked your brother, who was staying with your mother, if he would babysit for your daughter. Where were you going?
I was needing to go to Fresno, and I had just received my income tax check. So I needed to go to Fresno, and I was on foot because my car was impounded the day prior.
Were you going alone?
To Fresno, yes.
So you brought your daughter on the 17th of May to your mother's house, and your brother was supposed to watch him, according to you, while you went to Fresno.
Yeah, he met me down the street, actually, because there's a restraining order, so I didn't actually go to the resident.
Who has a restraining order?
My mother has a restraining order on me.
Is the restraining order that she has against you a final order or a temporary order?
It's good for 3 years, that's all I know.
That's a final order. Was that a final order of protection after a trial, or did you consent to it?
I was not notified of the court date. Didn't consent to anything.
Okay, so it was a default.
I don't know what that means.
It means you didn't show up and they entered a final order of protection in favor of your mother. So you're not permitted to go to her home.
Right.
Since that's not really the subject of this, I don't have to get into it. In any event, you went on the 17th, you dropped your child off at your mother's house, your brother was there, and then what happened?
I finally got to Fresno, I got a ride, I got to the check cashing place. It literally took me...
Don't tell me, I'm not interested in that. 17th, you dropped the child off. You were supposed to pick the child up when?
That evening.
On the 17th?
Yes.
And did you?
I showed up it was a little before 10. I showed up, I called my brother, I said, I'm down the street. He was like, yeah, I'll be right there.
10 o'clock at night?
It was almost, ma'am, I was on foot. And
it's just a second. I asked you 10 o'clock at night.
It was right before 10, yes.
Okay.
When I got there, I called him. It had been about 15 minutes had gone by, and I called him back, and I said, where are you at? And he said, Mom won't let me leave with the baby. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, Mom won't let me leave with the baby. My mother instinct kicked in, and I went in like fight or flight, and I walked down to my mom's house, and I knocked on the door and was asking for my daughter. I finally came to my...
Okay, so when your brother said that to you, instead of going to the police, you violated the order of protection.
I ended up leaving and calling the sheriff.
Okay, but you didn't. You went...
Of course, yes. I was going for my daughter. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what happened at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30?
Yes. I finally realized that about 5 minutes of being at the house, I was like, okay, you need to leave. So I left because she wouldn't open the door to give me my daughter. I left. I called the sheriff. And so I told them the situation. So they had walked down to my mother's and let her know that what she was doing was basically...
No, not what she was doing. The police came
and told her
with
that they
you.
could arrest her. And told her that if she did not, that she needed to get my daughter back. But because it was late, the baby was already asleep. And so the cops that came back down to me and they said, look, we don't, because they knew me.
Whatever. I'm allowing you to give me a certain amount of hearsay so that I can make this story make sense.
Oh, okay.
Do you understand? But don't tell me because they knew you, what they thought.
Yes, ma'am.
You were told to come back in the morning.
Yeah, the agreement was that between my mom and the sheriff was that I could pick up Malia in the morning. The sheriff told me to call before 6 o'clock in the morning before he got off his shift and that he would come back out and do another standby. The next morning came. Between me and my grandma, I had to call my mom. And
No, just a second. What does that mean between you and your grandma? Your agreement was you were supposed to call the sheriff. The sheriff, according to you, before 6.
I called my grandma.
No, not the grandma. The agreement was you weren't supposed to call your grandma. You were supposed to call the sheriff.
Right, but I needed a ride. I needed a ride. So I called my grandma to have her come pick me up.
Just a second. Where were you?
I was staying at a friend's house. I didn't live in Selma.
Just a second. You were staying at what friend's house?
Kimberly smirks. Caption coming up.
The sheriff came, got behind us, and tried to pin us in, and my grandma went to take off.
So your grandmother was driving?
Yes, ma'am.
And she was trying to evade the police to go someplace else.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Kimberly and Rhonda.
Kimberly Gutierrez claims her mother, Rhonda George, owes for debit card charges and personal belongings.
You were staying at what friend's house?
My friend Isaiah's.
Isaiah?
Yes. I stayed the night there waiting for my daughter.
Just a second. Isaiah. Isaiah what?
Bonilla.
And what is your relationship with him?
He's my best friend. He's been my best friend since high school.
Where are you living now?
I live with my grandmother right now since I was released.
Full time?
Right now, yes.
What do you mean right now, yes?
I'm in the process of getting my own place.
Okay, so you called your grandmother and then?
Called the sheriff.
And then?
Waited for the sheriff to respond.
And then?
The sheriff did not respond for a few hours.
Okay, so you were waiting for the sheriff to respond. The sheriff did not respond until when?
It was after 7 o'clock in the morning, and it wasn't even, yes, ma'am, 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Your daughter is, according to you, 19 months old? 19 months old. And she had prior to that been living with you?
Yeah, she was living with me all the time, yes.
She was living with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now let's get back to this arrest that you had. According to your papers, your daughter was with you up until that time. What time did she wake up in the morning?
Usually she wakes up between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, well, then could you tell me why, if she wakes up between 7:30 and 8, why you would even contemplate picking her up before 8 o'clock in the morning?
Because one of my issues was with certain officers that would have been responding, and the officer that responded the night of the incident, he told me, if you wanted me to be the officer to respond, you need to call me before I get off my shift.
Fine, but he didn't respond to you. But according to you, he didn't respond to you.
No, it was
so
a different
then my
officer.
question to you
They
is,
did
if
respond
you're,
at 7 o'clock in the morning.
and did what?
It was a horrible mess.
Well, he did what?
They responded. When they responded, he showed up. The officer told me that he did not want to be there. He said, if I have my way, you'll never see your daughter again. And I looked at him, and I said, wow, okay.
What do you mean you looked at him? Where were you when you looked at him?
I was right next to him, but I just...
Where, at the precinct or at your house?
No, down the street from my mom's.
Okay, so he responded to you when you were down the street at your mother's house, and he said, I'm not getting involved in this, and if I had my way, you would never have your daughter. And so what did you do?
So at that point, my grandma pulled up, and I told him, I said, your assistance is no longer needed, and that my grandma could just get my daughter. And he says, well, you already called me. The deputy did. So I said, okay, whatever. He asked me if I had somewhere to live, and I said yes, and whatever. And so he went down to my mom's. When he went down to my mom's, he was supposed to just go down there and get my daughter. When he was taking too long, I could walk so far this way, and I could see straight down my mom's street. So I did. When I did, I seen that my mom was out there just giving him an earful. I know this woman very well, okay? So I just imagined what was being said about me. Well, I guess the back door is screwed and nailed shut at the house. I don't know why.
I don't know. It's not important.
Yeah. So anyways, my best friend went over the back fence.
What do you mean your best friend?
Isaiah Bonilla.
Oh, so you brought Isaiah with you?
He went...
Just a second. So you have your grandmother, and then you've got Isaiah, your best friend, also to go to your mother's house.
Yes, ma'am. He got my daughter.
Isaiah brought her to where you were.
Yes.
And then what happened?
I started walking back towards Isaiah's house. When I started walking back towards Isaiah's house, my grandma pulled up in her car, and she was like, are you ready to go get your car out of the impound lot? And I said, yeah, I'm ready. And so I got in her back seat with my daughter. When I got in the back seat, I got in the middle. Well, then she was like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen. Your mom's over there saying a whole bunch of stuff to the deputies, so I don't know what's gonna happen. And so I was like, well, I gotta go get my stuff from Isaiah's. So I go to jump back out the car. As I go to jump back out the car.
But just a second. Now you have your daughter.
Because I needed my wallet. My bag was at Isaiah's. My purse and everything was at Isaiah's. I was gonna go back and pick it up. Well, right when we were gonna go back, the sheriff came, got behind us, and tried to like pin us in, and my grandma went to take off.
So your grandmother was driving.
Yes, ma'am.
And she was trying to evade the police to go someplace else.
Yes, ma'am.
And how many police cars were involved?
One.
Were there ever any more than one police car?
Once we got to the police department, of course, there's a police department.
No, I'm talking about the number of police cars. So there's a police car now.
Like coming behind us? No, it was just one.
It was just one?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were accelerating
to
get there? Was the police car siren on?
No.
Well, how did you know that he was trying to pull you over?
Because he tried to hit her car.
Oh, that would give you a clue. So you're telling me he tried to hit your grandmother's car without notifying you in any way to pull over?
Yes, ma'am. That's why I spent 4 months in jail, and I beat my case. I went to trial and beat my case. Everything was dismissed.
I'm not responsible for the criminal justice system. I'm only responsible for what goes on here.
Yes, ma'am.
So I assume once you got to the police station, both you and your grandmother were arrested?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was in May?
Yes, ma'am.
And now we're, uncross your arms. And now we're in December.
Yes, ma'am.
Of the same year.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're out of jail.
Yes, ma'am.
And you've been out of jail for about?
Since August 25th.
Who does your daughter live with?
Right now, she's with a mentor. She's my ex-husband's aunt, ma'am.
And who placed her with your ex-husband's aunt?
I did.
Not the court?
No, I requested her.
Does the child's great aunt have guardianship?
No,
custody?
I'm getting my daughter back, ma'am.
But for the last 3 months, she's been with this aunt.
Right, because Child Protective Services did get involved, and Child Protective Services, I've been doing everything that...
Well, that's what I asked you. I asked you whether Child Protective Services
Child Protective Services did get involved with my daughter, yes.
Did? That's what I assumed.
And I've been drug testing, I've been doing...
Just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I assumed, that Child Protective Services was involved. And so if Child Protective Services are involved, then they are overseeing the child's placement with the aunt. You have an ongoing case.
Yes, ma'am.
Probate court.
No, not probate.
Which one? Family court?
Family court. Yes.
When was the case opened with regard to your daughter in the family
May
court?
18th, the day I got arrested, ma'am.
And that child became involved with the foster care system in May. Okay, so your grandmother also spent a little time in jail. How much?
2 weeks.
I quite frankly don't understand your case.
While I was in jail, Your Honor, while I was incarcerated, my mom had all my debit cards, my ID. She had went and actually, because of me getting arrested, she had went to Isaiah's and picked up all of my stuff.
You mean, just a second. Let me understand this. It is your claim that the reason that you had to go to Isaiah's house was to get your pocketbook, your wallet, your credit card that you left there.
But I never made it there.
I understand that. And Isaiah, clearly, from what you tell me, knew of the problem because he was part of this little conspiracy to get your daughter out of the house and was at the back of the house to pick up your daughter who was being put over the fence. So why would Isaiah give your mother?
Because she went over there with a baseball bat and busted out his windows.
Caption coming up.
On February 4th this year, I had...
Kimberly's eyes fill with tears.
I lost my twins, okay? And that was the first time I had contacted my mother because I was going through it and I messaged her and I told her, I said, I really need my mom right now. If anything, I need my mom right now.
A wide-eyed Rhonda shakes her head. A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Kimberly and Rhonda.
Kimberly Gutierrez is accusing her mother, Rhonda George, of wrongfully using her debit card and keeping her belongings.
So why would Isaiah give your mother?
Because she went over there with a baseball bat and busted out his windows. And the reason why all of my things were at my mother's was because I hadn't lived at my mom's for over a year.
What your case is about
is my belongings.
You claim that your mother went over and got your wallet from Isaiah's because I asked you what you were doing here. I certainly am not looking into the allegations of false arrest. It sounds as if you did the absolute wrong thing in trying to regain your daughter, whose custody, actually, you lost at a dispositional hearing and was determined to be a dependent child and placed in foster care. That's what happened here.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not even addressing your claims of false arrest.
Okay,
what you did was actually the wrong thing. I said, so what are you suing for? Now,
you said my belongings,
okay.
my
what,
money.
Just a second. What money?
She used my CalFresh, which is my EBT food stamps, and my CalWorks, which is my cash aid through the welfare department.
Just a second. So you're suing her for taking your food stamps and your welfare check?
Right.
Just a second. Your food stamps and your welfare check.
And this is the statement from my tax return of all the money that was on there.
On where?
On my debit card. It had over $3,000 on it, and I marked what was used after she had picked it up. And then these are receipts from some of my belongings that was at her house.
Just a second. You haven't lived in your mother's house?
I moved back to my mother's in the beginning.
Just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
You hadn't lived in your mother's house, according to what you said to me. Whitney, was it a year ago? Didn't you say that you moved out of your mother?
My mom allowed me to come back.
Because there was an order of protection.
She had called me. I was living in Fresno, ma'am.
Just a second. You hadn't lived in your mother's house. You said you were living with your grandmother. For how long were you living with your grandmother before May?
I said I was living with my grandmother right now. I was living in Fresno, ma'am.
I want to know what property you think...
My clothing, my husband's clothing, my daughter's bassinet. I had jewelry there. I had all of my clothing.
Why would all of your clothing be there? You were living with your grandmother.
I hadn't moved into my grandmother's until I got out of jail. I was living in Fresno. And my mom...
Just a second.
You're not letting me talk.
I'm not understanding your movements.
Okay, my mom kicked me out in 2021, okay? My daughter was just a few weeks old. My mom kicked me out due to her boyfriend.
She kicked you out?
Yes.
And?
When she kicked me out, I went through Marjorie Mason, and Marjorie Mason had placed me in hotels. I was placed in hotels for about 3 or 4 months, okay? And then it was about January of 21. I was at this time, I was pregnant with twins. They had genetic defects. On February 4th this year, I lost my twins, okay? And that was the first time I had contacted my mother because I was going through it and I messaged her and I told her, I said, I really need my mom right now. If anything, I need my mom right now. My daughter, she had not seen my daughter. She was not a part of my daughter's life. I did not speak to my mother, nothing. So she made an agreement that she would watch my daughter, because I had to go to San Francisco because I was too far along in my pregnancy, and it was just a big old mess.
Do you have any of your daughter's property?
No.
Okay, now, let's talk about this card. Did you pick up her property from Isaiah? That's either a yes or a no, after the 18th of May.
Well, how do I answer that when I did pick up her property, but her cards were not in there? Her driver's license wasn't in there. Her food stamp card wasn't in there.
What were you doing at Isaiah's?
So she asked.
Was this when she was in jail?
Yes, right after she got arrested. So I went down there. No problem. He handed it right to me. Look in my wallet, make sure everything's in there. Like I said, I don't know if it was her driver's license or ID was missing, her food stamp card, and the other card, the bank card. I don't know how to get proof, but her best friend, he cashed out everybody money. There was a bunch of people,
I have
even himself.
The information right here.
Even himself and his girlfriend. I don't want to get into the whole.
I don't want to get into it either. It's far too complicated for me. Is what you're telling me that you never used a card that she had?
No, I did not.
Because I'm not concerned about food stamps or welfare.
I did not.
You're suing the wrong person. You were in jail, so you didn't need money from welfare. What proof do you have that
I have my bank statements.
What proof do you have that your mother withdrew money?
She was the one that went and picked up my cards.
Oh, I don't know that. That's not what she says, and you have no proof. Isaiah's not here, correct?
No.
I don't doubt you when you say that somebody used your card. I just need proof
My
to
mother,
show.
I know that she was supposed to get my daughter from CPS. She was supposed to go get a crib with my card, and I have the where she, and my grandma can.
I just want you to show me.
Ma'am.
No. That your mother. I believe that people used your card.
She used my card.
No, I don't know that. I need you to show me proof that your mother.
How am I supposed to show? I have my bank statements.
Then I'll take a look at your bank statement. If your bank statement tells me who used your card, then that's an easy. She said she did not. I just want you to show me proof that any of these were used. I mean, we have a lot of PlayStations, DoorDash, Amazon Marketplace.
And
all
I
of
was locked
those.
up throughout that whole time.
I understand that. I suggest that you concentrate on getting yourself together. If you want to reunite your family, I suggest that you put your priorities in order.
Oh, they are in order.
Evidently not.
I work, I have a job, I go to school, I'm getting my own place, but I'm going to court, I'm getting my kids back.
Good.
Can I give you this?
I don't know what it is.
Well, I just want you to look at it.
Rhonda hands a document to Kevin, who brings it to Judy. She reviews it.
You're telling me this is part of your daughter's criminal history? What is this?
No, I'm just showing you she just got out of jail just a couple of days ago.
They haven't picked up charges, Your Honor.
You were arrested on November 28th?
Yes.
I'm not going to let you tell me about this. You have a lawyer?
Yes.
As I said, Ms. Gutierrez, if you're trying to work to get your family back together,
Yes, ma'am.
and your kids back together,
Yes, ma'am.
it would be a good idea to think about having more children until you get these children back under your roof. We're done here. Your case is dismissed.
You have a good day.
This court is adjourned.
Outside the courtroom, Rhonda.
For the cost of a car and childcare.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, everyone.
Kevin approaches Judge Judy at the bench.
Hello, Judge. Case 2195, Sherrod versus Vasquez.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Judy turns to Desiree.
Ms. Surratt, you and Mr. Vasquez were in a relationship for a period of time and have two children together. How old are the children?
I have a daughter that's 15 and a son that's 8.
How long did you and Mr. Vasquez live together, if you did live together?
It was a lot of off and on, so I would say maybe a combined time of 8 years.
And does your daughter enjoy a relationship with her father?
Unfortunately, no.
Is that correct?
As far as I knew, that she had a great relationship with me.
When was the last time you saw your daughter, sir?
We spoke just a couple of days ago. You know, she has more time with friends now, but I do speak with her on a frequent basis.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Why don't you wait outside? Okay? Because, Ms. Surratt, I don't believe in, unless it's absolutely necessary, and certainly in this situation, it doesn't sound to me as if it's absolutely necessary to have your teenage daughter as a witness over couple of $1,000s, which you may or may not be entitled to. Certainly, Her father is in touch with her. She said he's in touch with her, which means that they communicate and that they have a relationship. Because I read the complaint and I read the answer, and I have a few basic questions. You're suing Mr. Vasquez, who you haven't lived with in many, many years, but who you share, according to what I've read here, joint legal and physical custody. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that pursuant to a court order?
Yes.
And when was that court order made?
I have a copy of it, so I can tell you.
2011, Your Honor. 2011.
Was there a trial, Mr. Vasquez?
There was a trial, Your Honor, yeah.
Were you represented by counsel?
I represented myself.
And what about the plaintiff? Did she have a lawyer?
She did, Your Honor.
I'd like to see a copy of that order.
It was from 2017.
Well, there was one in 2011.
This is the original one. It hasn't changed since then. We have parenting and legal custody, and a child support order, which is separate.
Judy reviews a document.
I'll say the 2016 order, the ex parte order, originally granted Mr. Vasquez custody of the children. Yes, you were the respondent in that case. It said on October 28, 2016, petitioner, that is Mr. Vasquez, filed a motion to establish custody and parenting time. The petitioner, that is Mr. Vasquez, seeks joint legal and physical custody. The petitioner also sought an order granting sole legal custody of the children based upon the allegations that his daughter was watching his son without supervision for extended periods of time and that his daughter was not attending school. Child Protective Services did an investigation and actually found that you were not sending your daughter to school.
Correct.
And she was staying home and she was babysitting. Okay. Would you tell me, without my having to go through this whole thing, was there a child support order entered?
Yes.
Ultimately, and ultimately the children remained with you?
Correct.
The final order. And what was the child support order?
The child support order initially was $93 a month. I think I have a copy of it. And then to increase based off cost of living adjustments every year.
Is that $93 a month for both children?
For both children.
Okay.
Yes.
The order was ultimately increased. How much do you pay in child support now, sir?
$230 a month, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, that's not the order.
Well, I asked how much you pay. Were you ever in arrears of payment?
I was at one point, and then I caught up, so I've been caught
Well,
up.
they're catching up, so that $230 may be partly arrears. What is the order?
Oh, I'm completely caught up with my child support.
So the current order that you're paying is $230 a month?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. This is what you're suing for. It is your claim that Mr. Vasquez agreed to pay half of certain sporting fees that the children had that are not contained in the child support order, and he didn't. So you're suing him for that, and he says that you never had such an agreement, that you enrolled the children in sporting activities, and then came to him and said, do you owe me half? Am I reading that correctly?
Your Honor, that's correct.
That's your position?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's move on to the plaintiff's position that you wanted to change the child support order to not what he was paying, but what he was paying, and half of their sporting activities.
We actually had a verbal agreement.
Well, I'd like you to tell me when that took place, what you said to him, and what he said to you. So tell me first when that verbal agreement took place.
It was 2021, probably, just a conversation between two parents to say if we enroll.
It's a conversation between two parents.
Right.
So he's seeing the children, he's paying his child support, whatever the order was. You have a conversation with him. Is it on the phone or in person?
Caption coming up.
Mr. Vasquez, your father says that he gave you the money. Certainly wasn't a day, because 2 weeks later, he writes back, if we could arrange for me to get the title while you were here, that would be awesome. So the story you just gave me was a whole lot of who shot John.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Desiree and Curtis.
Desiree Surratt claims her ex-boyfriend, Curtis Vasquez, owes for the cost of a car and childcare. Curtis is countersuing for car repairs and vacation expenses.
Tell me first when that verbal agreement took place.
It was 2021, probably, just a conversation between two parents to say if we enroll.
It's a conversation between two parents.
Right.
So he's seeing the children, he's paying his child support, whatever the order was. You have a conversation with him. Is it on the phone or in person?
No, in person.
At your home?
Yes.
Okay. And tell me about the conversation. What did you say to him and what did he say to you?
I don't remember the exact words, but...
Well, that's why we bring these things quickly, because now it's 2 years later.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was basically, well, he wants to play this sport, Angelina wants to do track, this is how much it's going to cost, and his response was just, okay, let me know how much it is, and I'll pay half.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's not quite correct. We don't have just conversation. We don't have any conversation at all. We communicate via text, and I rarely get a response. I've taken care of...
Just a second. We're talking about this one instance.
Okay.
She said that you had a conversation with her where you agreed to pay half of their sporting events. Based on that, I assume that you enrolled the children in the sporting events, paid the fee, and then said to him, this is your half. And he said, I'm not paying that half.
That's not correct, Your Honor. I didn't agree to pay half.
No, I'm not saying you agreed to pay half. That's what her position is.
I actually enrolled my son into soccer.
When?
It was this summer in July. And he was supposed to go for a month, and she took the kids out of the state without my knowledge for an extended vacation. And so I didn't have her pay half of that. And when she came back, she wanted to make that up to him. But that's without my knowledge.
Okay. How much did you pay for soccer?
$75.
So you never had a conversation with her about paying half of this? And it was never reduced to a modified order of the court because you have a court order for support. Okay. So I'm eliminating that. You want to change the order of support, you have to change it in court. Now let's move on to the second thing that you think that he owes you for. Cell phone. Let's hear about the cell phone.
He opened a cell phone account for my daughter.
When?
I don't know when it was.
When did you open a cell phone account, sir?
About 7 years ago.
And he paid it? He opened an account and he paid it?
Him or his dad. It was a business account.
I don't care.
I don't know
You
who
didn't
paid
pay
it. Correct. I didn't
You didn't pay it. So your daughter has had a cell phone for the last 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you didn't see the bills for it?
Correct.
Okay, so he paid it?
Somebody paid it, yes. Yeah.
He paid it?
I paid it, Your Honor.
You didn't pay it?
Correct.
Okay. So now you want money for a cell phone. For what?
Just for the last 6 months that I paid. I never agreed to, so I'm just asking for
Then
half
take
of
the
that.
phone away.
Well, she's 15. She's got
I
a job
understand that.
and
I understand that. Who bought her the phone?
I bought the phone.
Okay. And how many years ago did you buy the phone?
It was about 1.5 years ago.
Okay. And it was paid for on his plan?
No, I paid for the phone cash.
No. The bills, ongoing bills, were paid for by him and the phone that you bought her 1.5 years ago, because you said you've been paying the bills for 6 months.
Yep.
Is that correct? Whitney, didn't you say I've been paying the bills for the last 6 months?
Yes. Correct.
Well, so when you first got the phone for a year, he was paying the bills.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Well, he was paying the bills for 7 years, but certainly after you bought the phone. But prior to that, she had a different phone. She had to have had a different phone because he was paying the phone bills for 6 years. Who bought that phone?
I don't know.
Your Honor, I purchased that phone. It was the iPhone XR.
Okay. So you bought the first phone, you bought a second phone. Very nice. And he paid the bills, the phone bills for 6 years, and you paid it for the last 6 months. It's not part of a court order. If you agreed to do that, you agreed to do that. What are you getting courts involved for?
I never agreed to pay the cell phone.
Well, he never agreed to pay his cell phone when she was 13 or 12. Your parents. He paid it for a long time. Now you're paying it. What do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a realtor.
You work in a family business?
Absolutely.
Tell me about the family business.
It's children first and foremost, you know, what's best for them.
No, the family business, sir.
Oh, the family business.
You're in real estate. Is it a family business?
It is not a family business.
It's just yours. And you've been in real estate for how long?
For about 3 years now. And prior to that, I was in sales. That is a family business, and it's real estate marketing.
That's a family business.
That's a family business.
You're not involved with that anymore. You still are?
Yes.
Who owns that business?
Dad.
Your father?
He does, yes.
How many employees do you have?
Just about 10, Your Honor.
So your father employs 10 people and you're one of them?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And what does your father pay you annually?
Oh, it's commission only, so no benefits.
And in the other real estate operation, do you have your own office or do you operate out of your father's office?
My own office.
Where?
In Maple Grove, Minnesota.
Do you have any employees?
I don't.
So you work for your father on commission and yourself?
Commission only as well in the real estate market.
Okay. Did you file tax returns last year?
No, I did not.
Is there any reason for that?
Just late. Just over.
You're late. You're a year late.
Yeah.
What about the year before? Did you file tax returns?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did, Your Honor.
And how much did you declare as income the year before last?
It's like 55, I think. 55,000, yep.
Okay, so phone bill, I've taken care of the phone bill. You paid it for her, fine. And if you don't want to pay it anymore, let her get an after-school job and pay for her own phone. Now, the next thing that you're suing for is, according to your complaint, you had a car that you weren't using. Mr. Vasquez has a father who wanted a car. It is your claim that Mr. Vasquez, without your permission, sold the car, your car, to his father for $700, and you didn't get any of that money.
Correct.
Mr. Vasquez says his father was going to buy the car. He drove it. He didn't want to buy it because it had issues, and it's sitting in his father's driveway waiting for you to come and get it, and that he never got $700 from his father for the car. That's his position, correct?
No, there's a correction. I did get $700 and paid him back the next day because the car broke down within a day.
Because what?
It broke down within a day.
Okay, so you did sell it to him?
Yes, yes. We were in the middle of the transaction. He paid for the car at the office, which is about 10 miles away from home. And while driving the car home, it broke down. So we hadn't received the title or anything, so I returned the money.
Caption, coming up.
Okay, you planned a trip to Portugal in August of 2022.
That's correct.
Airplane tickets. Where'd you get the money for all that?
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Desiree and Curtis.
Desiree Surratt has accused her ex-boyfriend, Curtis Vasquez, of selling her car without her permission. Curtis claims he refunded the money, and she can take the car back.
Okay, so you did sell it to him?
Yes, yes. We were in the middle of the transaction. He paid for the car at the office, which is about 10 miles away from home. And while driving the car home, it broke down. So we hadn't received the title or anything, so I returned the money.
Is the car still titled in your name?
Yes.
So go get it.
I don't want the car, no.
Well, it's your car. It's titled in your name.
Yes, but apparently I have text messages showing he sold the car without my permission.
Whether he did or not, well, he can't sell the car because title never transferred.
Right.
And he's saying you can go and get the car. It's sitting in the driveway. His father doesn't want it. Title didn't transfer. He didn't get money for the car and keep it. It was a sort of silly transaction because what you are suggesting is he should have said to his father, that's it, it's sold as is. You can't have your $700 back.
Right, and my understanding is that his dad, through a conversation that I had with his dad did not get the money back.
You can't tell me about the conversation. If you have text messages between them, I would like to see them.
I do, yes.
Desiree hands documents to Kevin.
So there's those text messages. And I also have several text messages where Curtis agrees to pay me the money and also telling me the
This
car
is
ran
Desiree. Curtis said you would take possession of the Kia, but I asked about the title. Big Curtis, is that your father?
Your Honor, yes, it is.
Okie dokie. Mr. Vasquez, your father says that he gave you the money.
That's correct.
And that it certainly wasn't a day, because 2 weeks later, he writes back, sorry, not good at checking my text. If we could arrange for me to get the title while you were here, that would be awesome. That's 2 weeks later. Your father didn't say to her, he gave me the money back. He said, I want the title. That's 2 weeks later. So the story you just gave me was a whole lot of who shot John.
Well, Your Honor, there's one thing that we need to clear up right away is that it was never sold without her knowledge.
Just a second. Now what I'm asking you, sir, I'm saying that your original story to me was that I sold my father the car with her agreement. That's what you say here, for $700. He gave me the $700, but am I correct, Whitney, that the car broke down the next day?
He said the car broke down within a day.
Within a day, and so you gave him his money back. Well, that's not what your father says here, sir. That's not what your father says here.
I went back and forth with him for days, but I gave him his money back.
No, what you told me was a lie. You told me it broke down the day you gave him his money back. The initial conversation she had was May 9th. And then May 16th, she's having a conversation with Big Curtis. That's your father. Sorry for not checking my texts. Can you get me the title? Which means 2 weeks later, he wanted the title. And then your father says about you, Curtis owes me big time money, and I can't get money from him either. That's your father.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yes.
correct, Your Honor.
Big Curtis says to her, can you tell me what problem does Curtis have that caused him to spend massive amounts of money in such a short period of time? She answers, drugs, alcohol, gambling, he's a functional addict. He even got around $40,000 and he blew every penny. So the $700 you gave him for the car, I'm just going to file a small claims. For whatever reason, he's refusing to give it to me. It's not your fault that he stole the money from me. Just FYI, I have no issue giving you the title. Okay. So far, he owes you $700 for the car. And then we're finished. Get Big Curtis the title. Mail it to him. He sends you his address.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Great. Now you have a counterclaim, Mr. Vasquez.
Yes, Your Honor. I have some evidence I'd like to present.
Don't give me all that nonsense. You say that the plaintiff canceled a vacation trip. You made plane arrangements to take your children somewhere, and she took the children out of state. And car repairs that you gave her money for, car repairs, $250. I helped her repair her car and spent $250 on parts. When was that?
That was the car in question that we were just talking about.
Okay, you planned a trip to Portugal in August of 2022.
That's correct.
Airplane tickets. Where'd you get the money for all that?
My parents helped me with the purchase of the kids' tickets.
Why?
Because I couldn't afford all of them.
Who was going on the trip?
It was going to be my wife, myself, and 2 kids.
Did you go on the vacation to Portugal with your wife?
No, we did not make it.
You did not make it?
Correct. Why? Because she is responsible of...
No, not her. Not with your 2 kids. Did you go with your wife?
No, I didn't.
Why?
I didn't want to go without the kids. It was the whole purpose was to bring the kids to see the grandparents.
Does your wife work?
Yes.
What kind of work does she do?
She's a bartender.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $700. Don't make any more private agreements with him, madam. I think it's a big mistake.
I
We're
agree.
done. Your counterclaim's dismissed. We're
Your Honor.
finished.
Thank you.
We're
I
finished.
had one more.
I just ruled that your counterclaim is dismissed.
Your Honor.
You're finished.
I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get everything that I felt that I was owed.
Well, a bit disappointed. I felt like I had a lot more coming my way.
Number one, I will not do him any favors.
I've taken care of my kids financially for the last 7 years.
Especially of monetary value.
She feels entitled to 6 months, so be it, but I didn't agree to it.
I hope that this is kind of a wake-up call to him
It's completely ridiculous. I'm just tired of having my name dragged through the mud.
to do honest business, whether it's in personal relationship or business.
I take care of my kids.
He's got a long history of owing money, not paying it back.
Always have, and always will, regardless.
He runs through family and friends and dry your pocketbooks and laugh out the door. He doesn't care.
Claim money for a cell phone that, I bought. And I think this is all to do with spite.
Just my kids. At the end of the day.
For unpaid expenses from their mother's funeral.
Court come to order. All rise.
Judge Judy enters.
Have a seat, everyone.
Kevin approaches.
Good morning, Judge. Case number 2011, Rubin versus Rubin.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Rubin, this is your brother.
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
And this case involves sharing expenses for your mother's funeral.
Correct.
And it is your claim that your brother, who I believe was living with your mother at the time she died,
Right.
agreed to pay half of the funeral expenses when he received proceeds from a small life insurance policy that your mother had left.
Yes, Judge. Our mother only left us a $5,000 life insurance policy.
That's what the case is about.
Right.
Your brother's position is it's not his responsibility. He made no such promise. Of course, you do understand that without that promise to pay for your mother's funeral expenses, children aren't normally responsible for the expenses of their parent. You understand that?
Yes, Judge.
Mr. Rubin, when did your mother pass away?
She passed away August 20th of 2021.
How old was she?
She was 86.
And how long had you been living with your mother?
Your Honor, I took care of my mother since 1991.
Well, If you were taking care of her for almost 30 years, sir, what kind of physical malady did she have when she was in her 50s?
She suffered from chronic kidney failure.
When did that medical condition develop?
Pretty close to 91.
What is pretty close to 91?
Beginning in the 90s, 91, 92, etc.
So when you moved in with her, was your mother sick or was she not sick?
She was sick.
Did you live with your mother because it was not only good for your mother, but because it was good for you? That's what I'm
Correct.
trying to get
Yes.
to. The answer is yes.
Yes,
And you moved into your mother's house
Correct.
that she owned or rented?
She was purchasing it through a mortgage.
She owned her home.
Yes, ma'am.
Was
Correct.
she working in the 90s?
She was.
Therefore, she wasn't incapacitated to the extent that you needed full-time care.
At the beginning, no, ma'am.
When you moved in with her, she was employed on a full-time basis,
Correct.
sufficient enough to get a mortgage from a bank based upon her income.
Correct.
And what were you doing in 1991?
I worked.
For whom?
Associates.
For how long?
Off and on from 91 till about 2 years ago.
What does off and on mean?
I had several jobs in between. I sold cars for various car dealerships, and I also owned several businesses.
When you lived with your mother, who paid the mortgage?
My mother did.
Did you pay your mother for any expenses? Rent, gas, electric, phone, anything? Or did you live there and you had an agreement? You lived there, she wanted your company, whatever it was. She lived alone?
At the time, yes.
In 1991, she was just living alone?
Correct.
And I assumed, therefore, happy to have your company.
Correct.
I assume. Okay. So you made no payments to your mother?
With the occasional help with some utilities or food, yes.
Okay. So you were able, I assume, to save a substantial amount of money?
Correct.
Just for my own information, so that I can sort of put this thing together.
Sure.
You have stocks, bonds, savings?
No, ma'am.
What do you have? You were able to save a lot of money. How did you invest it?
I invested in several businesses, which one is my liquidation company.
What happened with your mother's house?
When she passed, I was still residing at the house. I paid the mortgage by myself for the months of September 2021 as well as October 2021. And I remained there until, I want to say, February 2022. My sister is the executor of the estate, and she sold it just recently for $465,000.
Okay. So what I'm gathering from you, you paid the mortgage, you say, in September and October, then you stopped paying the mortgage November, December, January, and February.
That is correct, ma'am.
But you lived in the house?
I did.
Rent-free, because you paid nothing?
Correct.
Where are you living now?
I live in Nogales, Mexico.
And you live in a house, you live in
an apartment, ma'am.
You pay rent?
I do.
Anybody live with you?
No, ma'am.
What's your rent?
$250.
Okay. And what was the mortgage payment in your mother's house?
I paid $1,750 even.
Are you the sister?
Yes, Your Honor.
Could you stand up for a second? I'm just getting some information. Tell me your name.
Shannon Hayes.
Miss Hayes, house was sold recently for $465,000. And what was left on the mortgage?
$258,000 plus a $35,000 third mortgage.
Your Honor, since her brother was not paying, since he wasn't paying, the house actually went into foreclosure. And so we had to get.
Just to say, I didn't ask you anything.
Okay, I'm just.
Sarah Rose, $465,000 less $258,000.
$207,000, Your Honor.
Less $35,000.
$172,000.
Okay, and there are 3 siblings?
And also, Your Honor, there was a $10,000 lien on the property that had to be paid.
So we're down to $162,000.
Correct.
So it's $162,000 clear, so a little over $50,000 a person.
She owed the IRS, Your Honor, for back payments in excess of $54,000. She hadn't paid taxes in years.
Did you pay the IRS?
I just did.
And how much did you pay the IRS?
$54,188.
Sarah, from $162,000, take out $54,000.
$108,000.
Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. She had Arizona state taxes, $3,000 I paid as well.
105, is that 105 net?
So we also have the medical bills that I had to take care of.
She had no insurance and she had to have Medicare.
She did, Your Honor. That's her copayment.
Okay, and what was her copayment?
$3,000 in medical.
Let's do a simple $100,000. How much were the funeral expenses?
$2,000
$434.73. Was the total funeral expense?
Yes.
Well, that's what you're claiming he owes you.
That's his share of the...
I want to know what the entire funeral cost, sir. You'll show me the invoice.
Sure. I do have all the invoices for you.
Sean hands documents to Kevin, who brings them to Judy. She reviews them.
The first one, Your Honor, is just for the cremation
1058.
Correct.
Okay. 1058.
The next one should be from the cemetery.
This is the total funeral home charges, and this is cremated remains internment of $2,200?
Correct. The next invoice you should have, Your Honor, is from services provided by a rabbi.
Okay, that was $600.
Your Honor, it was actually $700. I paid the rabbi $100 as an honorarium.
No, that's $600. Whatever you want to pay him as an honorarium, that's fine. So the total expenses $3,858.
You should have another invoice for a proposal for a headstone as well.
1717.
Yes, Your Honor.
3858 plus $1,717.
$5,575.
That's it. Okay. I assume your mother died without a will.
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. And you are the only surviving siblings?
Yes, Your Honor.
The estate will be divided into 3 parts.
Correct.
So each one of you will get about $33,000 from the estate after all of the expenses have been paid.
There's also the real estate commission fees that we didn't mention to subtract from the net income.
And what were the real estate commission fees?
$30,000.
Oh, yeah, that's a substantial amount.
Yes, Your Honor.
So 108 less 30, $78,000. So now you're down to $25,000 each.
That's correct, Your Honor.
What I'm trying to figure out is, even giving you all those expenses that you paid, your mother's estate, absent this $5,000 life insurance policy that there was, correct? And you got a share of that life insurance policy. How much? Yes, the answer is yes. How much did you receive?
$2,500 even.
Okay, $2,500.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you get a share of that life insurance policy?
No, Your Honor.
Did you?
Yes, Your Honor. I also received $2,500.
Great. And the estate had net, after everything, at least $75,000 divided by 3, which is $25,000 apiece after you pay all expenses, which in this case would have been funeral expenses. Do you understand where I'm coming from, sir?
I do.
I have children and grandchildren. 10 years is a long time. That's a grandchild. She didn't see me at least once a month. She better keep her fingers crossed that I don't change my will.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Sean and Randall.
Sean Rubin is suing his brother, Randall Rubin, for unpaid funeral expenses. Randall is countersuing, claiming Sean defamed him.
So now, if what you're asking me, Mr. Rubin, is to find that you had an agreement with your brother to pay 1/3 of the funeral expenses because the two of you each paid 1/3 of the funeral expenses. Is that what you did?
Well, Your Honor,
that's either a yes or a no.
It is a no. I'm the only one that had the money to process our mother. He would not even sign to get her processed to continue the cremation. I have evidence here I'd like to submit to you where he agreed to pay me half of it out of his life insurance.
Okay, that's all.
I have text from him.
Just a second. I'm going to take a look at it. You have to understand, Mr. Rubin,
yes,
that at this point, if I find that he agreed to pay for half, then you understand that you agreed to pay for half of her funeral. Ordinarily, the funeral expenses, you may front the money for those funeral expenses, but if the deceased had sufficient money in their estate to cover their last expenses, and those would be medical expenses, which you paid out of the estate, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Taxes, which you paid out of the estate.
Yes, Your Honor.
You paid out of the estate after you sold the house, broker's fees.
Mm-hmm.
State tax fees, along with those kinds of fees, would be funeral expenses. Now, if the two of you agreed, or the two brothers agreed, which is what you're saying, that he agreed to pay half, not 1/3, but he agreed to pay half of the funeral expenses for which you are not being reimbursed by the estate. Do you understand?
Correct. I have not received anything from the estate, Your Honor.
Okay.
Kevin hands Sean's document to Judy.
Well, this would be you. I'll let you know tomorrow. I think it's $2,200 for Menorah Gardens, and cremation was $1,053, so it's $1,626 each. That would be you, right?
Yes.
Okay, 1,626, because you asked him how much you owed, right?
I did.
So I assume since you asked him how much you owed, you had some sort of an arrangement with him to pay a third, because it does say a third, of the funeral expenses.
That is correct.
Okay, great.
I do want to interject, Your Honor, and let you know that when I did receive my monies, the $2,500 from her life insurance, we had communicated with one another that I had some emergency dental work that needed to be done. It was life-threatening. And therefore, he said, I don't have the email because I had to block him. I have a restraining order against him. So I lost all my emails between us.
Listen,
However,
nobody ever has their emails here or a video.
A very substantial amount of those monies went for my dental.
I don't care. How old are you?
59, ma'am.
You have lived rent-free for 30 years. And according to you, you had businesses. You worked most of that time, either selling cars or on and off for a company for 30 years. You made an agreement with your brother to pay 1/3 of your mother's funeral expenses. And as far as I'm concerned, if you had dental problems, pay for it from the resources of one of your businesses, because you had no expenses. You have very little sympathy for you. You lived in the house for months without paying the mortgage. That's outrageous. That's taking money away from them. Do you understand that?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
say you lived in the house for 3 months rent-free, at least 3 months rent-free. So if you paid mortgage payments for 2 months, I would say to you, sounds pretty reasonable to me. You know, there's a story that's created.
Correct.
And what's created here is there's unequivocal information in these text messages that you and your brother and sister, because you, sir, are claiming that he owes half. He doesn't owe half. That was never the agreement, according to what you gave me. According to what you gave me, and in your own hand, you say this is what you owe me, $1,600, not $2,600.
Well, Your Honor, if I can explain, the reason why I said half is only me and my brother were included in life insurance policy. My sister was not named on it, and it was only for $5,000. So,
sir, listen carefully to me.
I mean, if we put our money together, we could have paid for it.
Listen carefully to me. That has nothing to do with you.
Exactly. The same with his dental has
proceeds of
nothing
your
to do with
mother's
me.
final resting should have come out of the estate. That way, it would have been borne equally between the 3 people who will profit from the estate. You understand?
I understand, Your Honor.
Very good. So if you understand that, the math is simple. If he pays a third, you get your sister to kick in whatever she's getting back from the $25,000, and everybody is equal.
Well, Your Honor, I mean, you're already getting the vibe that this guy's the biggest bum who lived off his mother, sponged off of his mother.
Let me explain something to you. That is unnecessary here. Unnecessary, and really quite stupid. Stupid. You handed me evidence, sir, that you made an agreement with him. He asked you what he owed. You told him.
Yes.
$1,600. That's what you told him, that he owes you, $1,600.
That's correct.
And each of you are getting a certain amount of money for nothing from your mother. I'm going to ask you some questions. Prior to her death, when was the last time you saw her? When was the last time you saw your mother? Month and year?
I honestly do not recall, Your Honor.
Okay, just a second. Was it in the decade that she died?
Yes.
Okay, well, she died in 2021. So when did you see her?
Probably several years before that, Your Honor.
Well, so you didn't see her in the decade before?
Your Honor, you have to understand, her house was infested with bed bugs.
Pay careful attention to me. I asked you some questions.
Yes.
My question was, when was the last time you saw your mother? So you hadn't seen your mother in a decade. When was the last time you saw your mother?
I saw my mother frequently, Your Honor. It was May, Mother's Day.
Okay, Mother's Day of
2021.
And Your Honor, I did...
Shh, I'm not speaking to you. March of 2021. Prior to that, when did you see your mother?
November 2021.
Wait a minute. How could you see her in November 2021 if she passed in August of 2021?
November 2020.
Okay, May 2021, November of 2020. Prior to that, when did you see your mother?
I saw her frequently because...
No, not frequently. Month and year.
I don't have the...
Did you see her every month?
No, Your Honor.
Did you see her every 2 months?
About that, yes, Your Honor.
Okay, well, between May and November, that's more than 2 months. That's what you can remember.
Yes, Your Honor.
So it would be fair to say that whether he took great care of her and whether the house was clean or dirty or anything else, your 86-year-old mother lived with your brother, whether you like him or not, and you were totally disinterested in her. You're the one who started this, or I was about ready to finish this case, but when you say he's a bum, I say, you know what? This guy's got to be put in his place. He may have been, but he was the bum who took care of your mother. You started it.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Sean and Randall.
Sean Rubin is accusing his brother, Randall Rubin, of not paying his share of funeral expenses. Randall claims Sean spread multiple lies about him.
So it would be fair to say that whether he took great care of her and whether the house was clean or dirty or anything else, your 86-year-old mother lived with your brother, whether you like him or not, and you were totally disinterested in her.
Well, that's not true, Your Honor.
Well, I want to know if you didn't see your mother in a decade, and she had failing health, I would say, as a child, you were totally disinterested in her.
I did visit my mother after she had kidney replacement or kidney surgery. I visited her after her surgery. We both did.
Just a second. Do you understand where I'm coming from, sir?
I do.
I have children and grandchildren, right?
Sure.
10 years is a long time. That's a grandchild. If she didn't see me at least once a month, she better keep her fingers crossed that I don't change my will.
Well, Your Honor, I'm sure that Sarah is very close to you, where we live out of state.
Just a second.
We both have actual real jobs.
Just a second. If her father didn't visit me at least once a month, and we live in different states, he too would check the will. So what I'm telling you is, if you don't see your mother for 10 years, you are a disinterested child. You're the one who started this, or I was about ready to finish this case, but when you say he's a bum, I say, you know what? This guy's got to be put in his place. He may have been, but he was the bum who took care of your mother.
No, absolutely not.
Oh, really? Did your mother have full-time nursing care for the last 10 years? The answer is either yes or no.
It's an absolute
She
no.
declined.
That's not what I asked you. Not what she declined. Did she have full-time nursing care? That's a yes or a no?
Yeah, Your Honor.
Okay, so if she didn't have full-time nursing care and she was in poor health because, based upon your blurted-out answer to me, you thought she should have full-time care.
Yes, Your Honor.
Right, but she didn't. So he took care of her. You don't like the way he took care of her. That's your prerogative, but you let him take care of her. And you went about your business in your own states where you live, and he took care of her. And you didn't like him, and he may have been a sponge and a bum. You started it. But you were not interested enough in your mother to move next door to her or to have her move next door to you when she got sick.
Your Honor.
Somebody else
I actually did ask her to move in with me, and she declined.
Right. She didn't want to live with you. There had to be a reason for that if she was being abused.
Your Honor, there is.
Unless, do I look like I need help from you?
No, of course not.
Then I want you to be quiet.
Yes, ma'am.
You owe him $1,600. That's it, not $26, what he's asking you. Put it down.
I have a counterclaim.
$1,600, and I'll hear your counterclaim.
Thank you, Your
Which sounds a little ridiculous to me. I'm finished with you. $1,600, that's what you owe, except for the counterclaim, which I'll hear. Well, the counterclaim is that they posted something on the internet that says that there were bugs in the shoes you were selling. If that's, just a second, quiet. Your counterclaim says that he defamed you and your business because he wrote on the internet that there were bugs in the shoes you were selling. I couldn't make that up. Let me see. Maybe I did
You're
make it up.
correct. That's
yeah,
exactly what
he
he
posted that
wrote.
there were bugs in the shoes I was selling.
He also put that I impregnate Hispanic women.
Oh, just a second. First of all, that's not in here.
It's right here, ma'am.
It's not in my answer. So I want to see where he wrote, and who knows what you're doing in Mexico. I have no idea what you're doing in Mexico. Show me what he wrote about the bugs in the shoes that you're selling, giving me a whole lot of nonsense there that I'm not going to read.
It's not.
You give me...
These are the posts that he put online.
I only want to...
These are also letters from my mother in her own...
I'm not reading the letters from your mother.
Okay.
I'm reading a post or more where he says there are bugs in the shoes you are selling.
Yes.
Period.
Do you want to hear the audio that he sent to one of my employers?
No, I want to see where he wrote there are bugs in the shoes you are selling, which is what's in my answer.
Right here, ma'am.
May I have it, please?
And I do have a restraining order on him as well.
I'm not interested in your restraining order.
Judy reviews the document.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with anything. I'm going to give this back to you, and if you don't hand me exactly what I asked for, I'm dismissing. I'm not reading all that drivel. I asked you for one post.
Your Honor, if you'd like to say
I don't want to hear you.
This is what I wrote.
I
if you want to see
don't
it.
want. This is not your case to prove, sir.
Okay, I'm just trying to be honest.
Here you go, Your Honor. This is one that he
Thank you.
wrote
Don't
to
tell
my
me one.
employer.
Just give me the posts about shoes. This has nothing to do with shoes.
This one is in Spanish.
If you show me one more thing that doesn't say bugs and shoes, I'm just dismissing your case. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am. Please look at this one. It is in Spanish.
No, that's your problem. The counterclaim's dismissed. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,600. We're finished here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
This court is adjourned.
I'm very pleased with the judge's decision. I think she made the right decision.
I wasn't really thrilled.
I'm just kind of glad it's over. I never want to see my brother again.
We're a very estranged bunch of people. We do not like each other.
She didn't raise him right. She raised us right, and we're going to do the right thing on behalf of our mom.
Sarah and Judy.
First and foremost, I will visit you every month, every week, every day, if that's what it takes. But in all seriousness, this case shows how foolish it is not to memorialize your wishes for the end because it creates a heightened sense of stress.
For rent, a security deposit, and stolen property.
Court come to order. All rise.
Have a seat, please.
Kevin approaches the bench.
Hello, Judge. Case 2066, Michelonius versus Robertson.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Robertson, how long had you been living in your apartment prior to renting a room to the plaintiff?
I believe it was about 3 years.
You had been living there by yourself?
No, I had roommates previously.
When did the plaintiff move in?
I believe that it was January 1st of 2017.
2017?
It may have been 2018. It was the first, I forget.
It was 2018.
That's correct.
How long did he live there with you?
He lived there with me until September of 2021.
So far, that correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
So now let me understand this lawsuit. Mr. Robertson lived in his apartment for 3 years. You answered an ad for a room. You lived with him in his home as a tenant from January 2018 until September 2021.
Correct.
At that time, there was a dispute. We will get into that in a moment. There was a dispute. During part of that time, Mr. Michelonius, you did not pay rent. Is that correct? During COVID?
That's correct.
For what period of time did you not pay rent?
Well, there was, I had...
Give me how many months you did not pay rent?
There was...
You don't have to think out loud. How many months between January of 2018 and September 2021 did you not pay rent? Give me a number. That's a number.
4 months. Some months I paid partial rent. But there were 4 months that I did not pay any rent.
4 months, no rent. And how many months did you pay partial rent?
I believe that would have been 4 or 3.
So for 7 months, you did not pay your rent. Paying partial rent is not rent. Now, my question to you, Mr. Robertson, is this is an apartment that you rent.
Yes.
Or rented.
Mm-hmm.
From January 2018 until September 2021, was your rent current?
My portion of the rent was current.
What do you mean your portion?
My portion that I was responsible for.
No, it's your apartment. You're responsible for the whole thing, Mr. Robertson.
Yes.
Okay? You're responsible for the whole rent. And if what you chose to do was to say to your landlord, listen, I have a roommate, I'm just paying my portion of the rent, my roommate isn't paying his,
right,
then your rent wasn't paid.
Yes.
And I assume that your rent wasn't paid for the same period of time that he didn't pay you his portion of the rent.
Yes.
Was it for any period of time greater than that? Greater than the 4 months or the 7 months that he didn't pay rent?
I went through my bank statements and they went back until, I believe, July of 2020. And that's as far back as my bank app lets me go.
Okay.
There were more months than that I received partial or no rent payments for.
From him?
From him.
I'm asking you about your landlord. If you didn't pay your landlord, you telling me your landlord didn't file an eviction against you?
There were several months that he did pay his full rent, and so that would have meant that the entire rent for that period.
Well, I know, but if the rent was not paid, did your landlord ever serve you an eviction notice?
No, there was an eviction moratorium in Alameda County at that point for unpaid rents due to COVID.
Gotcha. So would it be a fair statement that you both took advantage of that? He took advantage of it, and so did you.
I wouldn't say that it was me trying to take advantage. I would just say it was my inability to cover the entire rent.
Your portion as well as his.
My portion was always covered.
Your portion was covered?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Michelonis, when did you move from month and year?
It was September of 2021.
And when did you leave there?
I believe it was the 3rd or 4th week of August of 2021.
So you both left the place at about the same time?
I left involuntarily, but yes.
Well, you left involuntarily, because that's what this case is about. Okay, so now I have the structure of it. Do you understand the structure of it?
I understand.
You understand the structure of it? I just want to make sure that people out there watching understand the structure of it. So you were the rentor, and you had an argument. It resulted in a protective order for somehow some genius put him out of his own apartment because of these protective. You weren't in the hospital for anything, were you, as a result of an assault? No.
No.
You have no medical records there of being treated for any injury.
It was a harassment.
Just a minute. Do you know my husband harasses me every day? Every day. I couldn't think of evicting him. I mean, you do other things. So the answer is, you were never treated for any illness. You were never treated for anxiety at a hospital as a result of this harassment. As a result of your allegations, let us say of harassment, Mr. Robertson was ejected from his own home, from which you had not been paying rent, your portion that you were supposed to pay contractually with him for months because of COVID. Am I getting this story right so far? I'm not finished yet, but so far, is there anything that I said was wrong?
I think that's pretty close. I mean,
okay, so that's pretty close. And now what you are seeking here is, should I say basically, and I hate that word, basically, but it's appropriate in this case. So all of those haters out there, she used basically, I don't care. It's appropriate here.
Whitney grins. Caption coming up.
And I put in the protective order that they were living with me, but they were moving.
No. They were living with you. You were living with them.
Well, yeah, we were living together.
No. You were living with the defendant. He wasn't living with you.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Mark and Christopher.
Mark Michelonis claims his former roommate, Christopher Robertson, owes for rent, a security deposit, and stolen property. Christopher is countersuing, claiming Mark owes him for rent.
Now, what you're claiming in your lawsuit is that after a review of the copy of the underlying lease, you found that you were paying the vast majority of the rent.
Correct.
And so you want a return of that money.
That's correct.
Under what theory in the law?
Well, basically that he defrauded
No,
me.
now you can't use a basically.
Okay.
I want to know what theory is there in the law that says if I own a building and I lease to someone the whole building for $10,000, and then I find somebody who is prepared to pay me, and I have the first 2 floors of the building. 3rd floor is vacant. I find somebody who's willing to pay me $9,000 a month just for the top floor. That makes me a good business person. But unless there is something that prohibits him from doing that...
There is, Your Honor.
Show me.
There's a clause in the lease.
No, just show me.
Okay.
I'm a lawyer. I can read a lease.
So the sublease that I agreed to with him incorporates the entirety of this master
Just a second.
lease.
I'd just like to see it, please, sir. I'd just like to see it.
Mark hands a document to Kevin, who brings it to Judy. She reviews it.
I assume you've highlighted what you want me to read.
Correct.
Okay. So what you're pointing to is that the landlord, his landlord, was not advised that you were subletting.
No.
Well, that's why signed by every tenant.
So that was one of the things, because if you look at the second lease, the one that was altered by Christopher to remove those areas, so I wouldn't be aware, or I wouldn't be able to enforce them, was because he moved his boyfriend in without getting my consent. And so it says in there that he needs written consent. I understand that that doesn't apply to me, but he thought it did. And so he used whiteout on the other lease that I gave to you to obfuscate those terms.
I don't know how to put this to you, sir, other than to say, let me backtrack. What kind of work do you do?
I'm a web developer.
You work for yourself or for a company?
I do. I'm an independent contractor.
How long have you been doing that?
2 years.
Prior to that, what were you doing?
I was a system administrator.
For whom?
For a small company in San Francisco.
How long did you work for them?
6 years.
So for 2 years, you were an independent web developer, and you're still an independent web developer.
Correct.
And that's how you support yourself.
Right.
So you work out of your home.
Right.
And you've been working out of your home, you said, the last 2 years since 2020. This is 2022 or 19.
Right.
What do you mean, right?
So it would have been.
When you moved in 2018, were you an independent contractor?
No, I was going to school.
You were going to school?
Right.
For what?
I went to.
Just a second, for what?
For web technologies. It was a program for web development technology.
Did you go in person?
Yes, it was an intensive.
For how long?
It was 3 months. It was 8 hours a day.
Okay, so you went to school for 3 months.
Right.
During what period of time?
January 2018 to end of March 2018.
Okay, and at that time you were living with the plaintiff?
Correct.
Okay, so you needed a room for that 3-month period. And after that time, you supported yourself by being your own boss, by developing websites.
It took me a while to find a job, but yes.
What do you mean it took you time to find a job?
The interview process to get work, I was interviewing, it was very hard to break into that industry.
And so what did you do?
So I started taking on independent work.
So you never actually got a job outside of the independent work that you did?
That's correct.
So you support yourself by doing web development out of your home?
Yes.
So you used the home that you were living in, that room that you were renting, for not only your personal business, but you operated a place of business out of your residence.
Okay.
What do you mean, okay?
Yes.
Yes. I just want you to see how ridiculous you are. You want $10,000 because you overpaid what you consider your fair share of the rent. That's not going to happen. You come here, you didn't pay rent for at least 7 months because of COVID. You were working according to you. You were a web developer, still are. It's 2022 because you have no other job other than being a web developer. You stopped paying rent. You moved out after he did, correct?
Well,
did you pay?
I'd like to correct
in the
something.
month that you lived there, when you had put him out of his house because they
were moving out. I did not put him out of the house.
I thought that was a protective order.
It was, but they were, and I put in the protective order that they were living with me, but they were moving, and so.
No. They were living with you. You were living with them.
Well, yeah, we were living together.
No. You were living with the defendant. He wasn't living with you. You were renting a place, although you weren't paying rent from him, and the underlying landlord wasn't getting his money, all of his money, because he wasn't getting your money. And what's coming to me is that somebody got stiffed with rent, and that would be the landlord who rented you your place where you were living, because you didn't pay him the whole thing. You didn't pay him the whole thing. And now you want me, you're asking me, to award you $10,000 for overpayment of rent.
Your Honor, could I clarify something? The times when I didn't pay rent, I was not working. It was during COVID, so the first couple months of the COVID lockdown, I lost all of my contracts, so I didn't have any money. And so I was using there was a COVID process where you could, basically say that,
There's no basically in there, only I used it once.
So I did not have the money to pay rent. I was not just making money and not paying rent. I would not do that. I was broke. All of my contracts dried up because nobody had any money. I was working for small
So what are you
companies.
suing him for now? The government was very good to you. This is a very interesting America. It's a rent forgiveness, it's a rent moratorium. That doesn't mean the state where you live. What state do you live in?
California.
California. That doesn't mean the owner of this premises was given some sort of a break that they didn't have to pay for utilities, taxes, mortgage on the building, because it's used as a business. As far as I know, there wasn't a moratorium on that, but there was a moratorium on two seemingly able-bodied people to say to the landlord, I can't pay my rent. to add insult to injury, you think that I'm going to give you $10,000 because he charged you more than whatever the third or 40% of your occupancy of the apartment, and he shouldn't have? That's not going to happen, sir. So forget it.
Mark lowers his eyes. Caption coming up.
I've been here a long time. If a landlord is owed $5,000,
Yes.
he doesn't say, well, tenant owes me $5,000, but his apartment was clean. I'm going to give him back his $2,000 security deposit. That doesn't happen.
A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Mark and Christopher.
Mark Michelonis has accused his former roommate, Christopher Robertson, of overcharging for rent and keeping his property. Christopher is countersuing Mark for unpaid rent.
Now, you gave him a security deposit. That is part of your lawsuit.
Correct.
So I want you to forget the overpayment of rent because it is ridiculous.
Okay.
So now let's go to the security deposit part of your complaint. Did he give you a security deposit?
He did, Your Honor.
Now, he didn't pay rent because of this moratorium
Yes.
on rent. Did you get your security deposit back from the landlord?
I did.
How much?
I believe I got the total amount for the entire apartment, which was approximately $2,000.
And how much did Mr. Michelonis give you as a security deposit?
He gave me $1,250 for the security deposit plus a $300 pet deposit.
Sometimes the pet deposit is refundable. Did you get the pet deposit back?
I don't recall specifically if I got that back from the landlord.
But you did get back your entire security deposit, which included his $1,250.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Let's hold that in abeyance for a moment because now I'm going to go to your counterclaim.
Sure.
I think that's all I have to deal with. Oh, and property taken without permission. Did you get that property back? There was some.
I did not.
What property was it?
There was a stone Buddha carving. There was some dishes, some glasses.
Oh, give me a break. Do you have a stone Buddha carving?
I have the stone Buddha carving. I have a small statuette, a rooster that is his, and a small metal.
Great. Would
serving
you
spoon set.
pack those up?
Yes.
Do you live close to each other?
I haven't been able to because of our mutual restraining orders.
Fine. Do you know where your local precinct is?
Yes.
Where is it located?
I believe that the closest one would be downtown for me, downtown Oakland.
Okay. You'll find out before you leave today. In 5 days, drop it off at the local precinct.
Absolutely.
Let him know when, and he could go pick up his Buddha.
Yes, I don't want
Great.
bad in my home.
Terrific. Now, money owed for COVID debt is your counterclaim.
Yes.
Which is what?
It
how
is
much?
a total of $55.35, I believe.
For what?
That is the unpaid rent.
But you didn't pay his rent, you just told me.
Right, and so this is the outstanding balance of the rent that he never paid that I'm responsible for as the master tenant.
Oh, no, you just told me that you got your security deposit back. If you got your security deposit back, sir, that means that the landlord is finished with you.
According to the law...
Not according to the law. If you got your security deposit back, the entire security deposit, the landlord has written it off because otherwise he would have taken your security deposit if you owed him or her money. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's very simple.
I understand what
it's
you're
very
saying.
Simple.
I wish I could explain that to them in your...
Well...
in your manner.
I want to tell you something. I've been here a long time. If a landlord is owed $5,000,
yes.
He doesn't say, well, tenant owes me $5,000, but his apartment was clean. I'm going to give him back his $2,000 security deposit. That doesn't happen.
So
only in the land of Oz does that happen.
They might live there.
No, they might live there, but I don't live there. Okay. You owe him $1,250 for security deposit. This case is over. Your counterclaim's dismissed. We're done.
Court is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
I would just like to bring...
Bye.
Well, I was a little upset.
He's being a drama queen.
The clause in the lease was to prevent people from basically taking advantage of the fact that they've been living in a place for a long time and gouging rent for new tenants.
He said I was price gouging him because he was enough to pay more rent than he might have if he had done some more research.
They were trying to make it equal, and every place that I've lived in, there was always an equitable share of the rent. Like no one was ever gouging anybody. So I felt that I was unjustly charged.
Well, I can't say it wasn't very satisfying to hear the judge call his claims ridiculous to his face.
Basically, he was leaving the front door open, making it so my dog could escape easily. He was filling the house up with smoke.
We both burned sage.
He was basically trying to get me riled up. He wanted me to move.
While I am disappointed that I won't be able to recover some of his COVID debt.
Basically, the moment that he was, it was inconvenient for me to be there, he tried to make my life miserable.
I'm glad that I will never have to see him again, and this is done.
I'm not living with roommates ever again. I've got my dog, and we're cool.
He was a nightmare, and I never have to see him again.
Judy.
Far be it from me to second guess another judge, but it would seem to me sort of outrageous unless there was some sort of a physical altercation. Why anyone, because he clearly was excluded from his house. He left first, and he said, involuntarily. Would anybody exclude
the original tenant? When I read the papers, I thought the same thing. I thought that was outrageous, that they would throw out the primary leaseholder on a lease in favor of his subtenant, which may or may not have